So I've covered a lot of Hazbin Hotel theories over the years. Some of them I'm still pretty alright with, considering how many of them were made before the show officially released. And others... let's not talk about it, okay? But a couple of years ago, on TikTok, somebody asked me which one of my theories, if any, I still stand by all these years later. And, off the top of my head, I can only think of one. Out of all the theories that I have done, the good ones, the bad, the cringy, the poorly aged, there is only one that I will throw hands with everyone in this godforsaken fandom over and die on a freaking hill on. It's this one. The very first Hazbin Hotel theory I ever created for this channel. There's a lot we can say about this video. It's short, and my delivery definitely needed some work at the time. But this is a take that drives me up a freaking wall, because someone has to say it every single year. Oh my god, is Alastor a wendigo? He looks like a wendigo, and he makes wendigo sounds. And he's a cannibal too. Oh, it's so fitting. No! No! You silly Billy. Alastor is not a wendigo. I feel like the reason why this take from the fandom bothers me so much is because I am an absolute nerd when it comes to urban legends, mythology, and folklore, because I can see where people are coming from with this theory. But once you start looking into what a wendigo is, you will realize that Alastor does not fit the bill at all whatsoever. Firstly, can we normalize the idea that not all cannibals are wendigos? Sometimes a cannibal is just a cannibal. Secondly, location. 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 The Wendigo is an Algonquin legend, meaning that its origins mainly pertain to certain parts of Canada, the Great Lakes region, and the northern United States. And where is Alastor from? Louisiana. And this matters because Wendigos are associated with the brutal cold of winter and the scarcity of food that the native tribes would struggle with during those times. As the legend goes, the way a person becomes a Wendigo is by consuming human flesh out of desperation to avoid starvation. And let me tell you something, Alastor comes across as anything but desperate when it comes to food and survival. Desperate for power, guaranteed for himself as soon as he got to hell? Oh, for sure, but becoming a Wendigo would not do that for him. He would become desperate for human flesh, and that would just become his entire personality and main motivation for everything. And why is that? Because Wendigos are desperate creatures. Their hunger is both insatiable and eternal. And despite Vivian describing him as a total foodie, Alastor himself doesn't really seem to be all that motivated by food. Okay, he does not fit the bill in this regard. Now, let's talk about his appearance. This is not what a Wendigo looks like. Or scratch that, this isn't what a Wendigo is supposed to look like. In pop culture, they've kind of taken on this grotesquely elegant animalistic look with a deer skull for a head, antlers, and it's a fascinating design. I'd even describe it as weirdly and morbidly beautiful. And that's a problem. In the actual folklore, the Wendigo does not exist to be aesthetically pleasing. In the actual folklore, the Wendigo looks like the decaying corpse of a person who died from starvation that was brought back from the dead and has been chewing on itself. You want a visual? The Wendigos from Until Dawn are a more accurate representation of what these creatures are supposed to look like. Look at it! It's terrifying, isn't it? It's ugly. It's grotesque. That's the whole point. You don't want to see this thing. You don't want to become this thing. And you don't want to be associated with it in any way, shape, or form. Now, let's look at Alastor. I mean, he is thin. especially when he grows into his larger, more terrifying demon form, and he probably does smell like a wendigo, considering he apparently has poor personal hygiene, and wendigos are known to reek of decay. But Alastor is also a product of the Great Depression. It's not all that surprising to me that he's a bit on the thin side, and at a surface level, he seems like he was an outgoing individual as a human. He was charming, he socialized, he held a job that was likely very difficult for a person of color or mixed race like him to get in the South in the 1920s. None of this screams potential wendigo to me. Then why is Alastor giving pop culture wendigo in the face then if he isn't a wendigo? Well, as a lot of us know, the appearance of a sinner in the Helliverse reflects how that person might have lived or died. Alastor died because a hunter mistook him for a deer, and thus he became a deer demon. Simple as that. The fourth item to make this list is the claim that Alastor makes wendigo sounds. Wendigo sounds. And what, pray tell, does a wendigo sound like? I never heard a wendigo before because if I did, I would be dead, especially when we consider the fact that I live in the Great Lakes region. Now, I did actually pitch this question to someone that made the claim to me that Alastor made wendigo sounds, and the audio sample that they sent to me in response can only be described as a mishmash of elk or caribou calls, the bellowing of a bull, the growling of a bear, and the bellowing of an alligator, all distorted, but in the end, recognizable. So I call bullshit. If you ask me, wendigo sounds should actually sound a lot more human. Primal, yes. Feral, definitely. Because we are talking about humans that have been corrupted by something. Again, think of Until Dawn. The shrieking, the growling, the hissing. It still sounds wrong from our civilized, non-cannibalistic perspective. It's still terrifying, but they're also sounds that humans are capable of making when they lose themselves. And let me raise you this as an argument as well. Go to your car, or pull out a radio of some sort. Switch it to the AM setting, and sit between two channels. I had a phase during my Hazbin Hotel era where I was obsessed with listening to AM radio. And let me tell ya, listen to AM radio long enough, and you'll hear just about every kind of sound Alastor makes in the show, which shouldn't come as to any surprise to anybody, because Alastor is the radio demon. Radio, demon. Radio, demon. If he's not going to sound like a goddamn radio host, then he's going to sound like a goddamn demon. All of this being said, this is the hill that I'm determined to die on. You cannot convince me that Alastor is in any way, shape, or form a wendigo. Like I said, I am a total nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff. And with that, none of the points that people try to make in saying that he is a wendigo really add up. And you want to know what's crazy? There is a type of sinner in Hazbin Hotel that we can look at and say that they could potentially be seen as wendigos. And out of all the discussions about Alastor being a wendigo that I've seen, I think I've only ever seen one other person who managed to point this out. And I cannot for the life of me remember who it was. The residents of Cannibal Town. Let's run back through my previous arguments real quick. They're all cannibals, and they've made cannibalism their entire personality. If they're not actively eating someone else, then they're thinking about eating someone else. In Season 1, Charlie doesn't get the residents of Cannibal Town on her side by inspiring them to fight for the sake of her hotel, or even themselves. No, actually, Alastor gets them on her side at the mere mention of being able to eat an angel. Just like that. They're all in, but they're not concerned about Adam or the prospect of an early extermination. Nope, they are solely motivated by food, and the cannibals' lyrics in the song Ready for This make that abundantly clear. Secondly, location, 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 which we don't really have any sort of confirmation about where these centers were originally from. However, in a 2019 live stream, VisiPop did mention that the residents of Cannibal Town became a cannibal colony because they're all from the 1910s. So I feel like it is possible that these were people who were all part of an impoverished community that was forced to resort to cannibalism in a desperate attempt to endure a period of hardship, possibly a famine, or even a particularly long and brutal winter. Thirdly, appearance. Take a good look, y'all. This is what a wendigo is supposed to look like. Note the deathly gray skin, the hollow eyes, very distinctly human, albeit monstrous and corrupted. And they're consistent. All of these cannibals look like this. Even Rosie, which is interesting because back in the days of the pilot, it was stated that Rosie never actually died, which could suggest that she may have been born in hell. However, it's important to consider that the wendigo can neither be considered entirely dead, but nor is it alive. If you want to get technical about it, the wendigo is actually a cannibalistic spirit that possesses a person after they consume human flesh, thus cursing them with that insatiable hunger. The possessed isn't dead necessarily, as they do still inhabit the world of the living, but they're too far gone to fully be called human. So if it remains true that Rosie never died, then that could mean that Rosie is the original embodiment of the wendigo spirit. This would explain why she is the leading overlord of Cannibal Town and why she has the power to form incredibly powerful deals with mortal souls like she did with Alastor. Granted, the residents of Cannibal Town do have their flaws as far as descriptions of wendigos are concerned. They're not all emaciated walking corpses. Some are fat, some are buff, some have a fairly average build, but overall, they more closely adhere to the original descriptions of the wendigo described by the native tribes than Alastor does. Fourthly, and finally, wendigo sounds. They growl, they hiss, they screech, and they're capable of human speech. We don't have to bend over backwards and jump through hoops trying to figure out what wendigo sounds are. This right here feels pretty spot on, if you ask me. So, I want people to start getting it into their heads that this is what a wendigo is supposed to look like, and not this. Thank you all for coming to my TED Talk. Anyways, that'll be all for this video, you guys. Thank you for watching. If you could all do me a favor and spread this video to, every corner of the Hazbin Hotel fandom, I would be oh so grateful for your service. If there are any topics you'd like to see me cover in a future video, let me know in the comment section down below. My name is BlueRaven666, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!